Hi, welcome to learnhowtogarden.com on this glorious October day. We're between the semi-finals in the World Cup and Scotland having had their place snatched away from them last Sunday afternoon. And the reason we're here is to show you what we're growing in our gardens and our allotment at Learn How to Garden and what you could be growing between now and next spring. If you're not subscribed to us at Learn How to Garden, there's a link directly above me right now. Just click on that link and input your email address. That means we can let you know every time we put up a written post. There are longer films in more detail on the website than there are on YouTube. You can find out what the gardening club is all about and why people are so excited about it. The really specialised courses at Learn How to Garden, if that's the way you want to go, or just keep up to date with everything we are doing here at Learn How to Garden. Here at Learn How to Garden, we actually garden in 4 gardens. 3 of them are the size of the average urban back garden, and 1 of them is like a big allotment. And in fact, we actually have another space we're about to start with a brand new allotment this year. So the garden I'm in is a replica of my mum's garden, and she spends no longer than 10 minutes a day in it. And what we have at the moment, we've got these butter beans that we're about to pick, and then they will be frozen or dried for the winter. We've got a massive bed of nasturtiums which is still covered in hoverflies, and we grow nasturtiums for 2 reasons. We grow it close to the beans because it attracts blackfly away from them, and 2, every part of the nasturtium is useful. We use the flowers, we use the actual nasturtium, the actual tiny nasturtium seeds we make capers from, and we actually can even make a nasturtium pesto. What we have here next to me is a tromboncino summer squash. Now, throughout the summer, and even now, whoa, he says, throwing it on the floor, we can pick them at this size. This is still producing perfect courgette size, but a nice taste. But you can leave them to grow this size. Now, this summer squash will store for at least 2 to 3 months throughout the winter. So it's like having a butternut squash, but just much larger. In the bed in front of me, we've got leeks that will be growing through the winter. We've got parsnips to harvest through the winter. And then at the front, we actually have leaf beet or chard, which is one of the things that will grow in any allotment, any garden in the UK, and will crop and crop and crop. And it is a perfect substitute for spinach in any spinach dishes. Right behind me on the fence, we have an espalier apple. We've just cropped the last apples. That's a Charles Ross apple. And this amazing thing is Verbena bonariensis. It was put in as a plant to attract pollinators, and it's gone a bit wild, but we've left it because 1, it looks stunning, and 2, it's actually just doing its job better. These are Borlotti beans, which are being left on the plant to dry out. And some of those will be saved to be used next year as seed. Some of them will be actually stored dry to use in casseroles or cassoulets throughout the winter. And we have another small no-dig raised bed in front of us. This small bed has perpetual spinach in the front, which again will grow throughout the winter quite happily. If it was going to get below about -6, I may be tempted to cover it with fleece. We've got celery, which is looking a tiny bit yellow on the edges because we stopped feeding this a couple of weeks ago. And again, we'll use this in the next 2 to 3 months. Please excuse the woodpecker in the background yowling away. We'll use this in the next 2 to 3 months, or we actually will just take this and it'll go to the chickens if we don't use all of it up. But it's grown brilliantly well. The fennel here has been allowed to go to seed because I'd like to get some fennel seed from it. Now, I'm not sure whether it's a bit late in the season for doing this, but I didn't get round to using this fennel till it got slightly too big, so I decided to leave it so that I could actually crop the seeds from it. We're in the second of our small gardens. Again, it's based on 3 foot by 6 foot raised no-dig beds. In the bed here on the left, we've got a mixture of Cavolo Nero, black Tuscan kale, and this amazing beauty. This is red Russian or red ball kale. They're different sizes because the far row was only put in the last 2 weeks. They were grown in modules once the remainder of the climbing beans came out. And you actually leave the roots of those beans in so that this bed hasn't been fed with anything other than the beans. On the right here, we have a mixture of Sprigarello, which is a heading broccoli, and cabbage. This is my winter cabbage bed. At the far end, we've got some celeriac, which are starting to sort of bulb up nicely for the winter. The furthest bed away from me is a hotbed, which this year we grew sweet potatoes in. It's just been planted with some Chinese cabbage, which were only sown 4 weeks ago, and they will grow quite happily in there for the winter, and the actual leaves will be picked 2 or 3 at a time and stir-fried, and in front of those we have snow peas which are waiting to go into this bed. Next to those we had this year's experiment. These are Barra beds, B-A-R-R-A, based on a technique used on the island of Barra, and these grew potatoes. Once the potatoes were harvested, we've put some late Brussels sprouts into the bed here on the left, and they won't be expected to produce sprouts till late spring next year. And the bed on the right here now has our garlic. 3 different types of garlic are growing in this bed. You can't see any yet, but they were only put in 7 days ago. What you can see actually behind me, which appear to be lots of sort of dead flowers, those are our annual flowers that we grow. We grow them to attract pollinators. I grow them because I like to have flowers in the house. They're all being left to go to seed. Some will self-seed, but more importantly than that, they're feeding the birds throughout the autumn. When it starts to get cooler, the finches especially love all of the seeds on the flowers. This is the 3rd of our small gardens here at Learn How to Garden. Again, no dig raised beds are what we use. Some of these raised beds in this actual garden are double dug in the classic method for raised beds. We've got the compost heap over here, which has again been utilised this summer. It's grown some really nice courgettes and some squash on it. The bed here on my right, this is Chinese celery, very, very fast crop. From sowing to eating only takes about 10 weeks. And then we have our baby vegetables. These are vegetables that are grown to eat very young, very sweet. We've got some fantastic Florence fennel here at the front, which will still stand quite happily for the next few weeks. We've got purple carrots, we've got some pencil leeks, more fennel, more carrots, more pencil leeks. Next to that, the middle bed has autumn sown shallots. These have only just been sown. Again, they're not showing yet, but will be quite happy throughout the autumn. The final bed here has a mixture again of cabbage and Brussels sprouts, but these are much earlier. These are autumn, winter, as opposed to spring, so they're further along. Behind me, behind these are all cloches we make here at Learn How to Garden to keep the pigeons off, mainly the biggest problem we have. Pigeons and deer, in fact, are the biggest problem I have. We've got carrots growing in a tub because someone at Learn How to Garden wanted to know if they could grow them in a patio tub, which are going quite happily. And we've got the end of the cosmos, again, being left so that the seeds become useful. This is one of the small herb beds which was created as part of the 101, the beginner's course, only 3 years ago. The thyme's still looking nice, but really it could do with cropping again and either drying, or you can actually sort of freeze that. You can put it into ice cubes, but it dries perfectly. Same goes for the sage here, which does need taking back really in the next week, otherwise it'll be too late for the sage. The stevia, which is a fantastic substitute for sugar, that needs cutting back and going inside. The geraniums need to come in. Obviously the bay will be quite happy out all winter. This is the front bit of the actual shed we don't normally see. We've got our sweet potatoes drying here, we've got some of the onions still at the front, and a massive amount of elephant garlic over there. As well as this, we're still cropping sweet peppers out of the small greenhouse. The chilies are ripening fantastically, but we've just sown Minuba, Mabuna, some more pak choi, and they will be going out into the beds. And as long as you've got cloches, those will get through the winter absolutely fine. If you've got a cold greenhouse, growing salads through the winter is what you should be doing with your greenhouse. And as soon as it gets to January, if you want the hottest chilies, that's when you're going to start to actually have to propagate those, so it's not long. But what this shows is that gardening, your allotment, your veg beds are 365 days a year, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. They should be working, they should be producing. I get really frustrated when I see programs that keep telling me, oh, there's nothing growing in the garden, there's nothing in the allotment, I can't do anything now till next spring. Yes, you can. All of these things will grow in your garden. It's not too late to get some of these in. You can probably still get plants of some of these to go in, and there are certainly salads that you can sow now which will go through the winter in a cool or protected greenhouse. So I just wanted to share with you what it's looking like here in the gardens at learnhowtogarden.com in the middle of October 2015.